It's cool to talk about how many deer you saw, but how many deer did you spook? So I'd rather go back to a stand that I didn't see anything on, but I think has good hope. When I didn't spook anything the time before that I went in there, I didn't think I spooked anything. Whereas if I went into a great stand, spooked some deer, I might not touch that stand for 2 or 3 weeks.
Before you buy a property, listen to what Jeff Sturgis has to share on how quickly you can burn out a property and how to be strategic about things. Listen up as Jeff Sturgis with Whitetail Habitat Solutions has visited with clients all across the country and has seen a lot of this take place. So here we go.
And, kind of brings up another point just real quick. Private and public land, private land, when you have even 500 acres, 200 acres, 50 acres, if you make mistakes, you can push the deer off your property pretty quick. And then it takes a long time for that property to heal and recover. Public land, you just go to another spot. And I'm not out here. Every stand location, we've put a lot of effort into work into every single location. Your approach, access, but everything that's built into that, from habitat improvements, whatever it might be. And it's almost stressful because you have to manage your sits. Public land, to me, I take the stress off. I go in a good spot and sit and enjoy the hunt and relax a little bit more. And it seems less stressful on public land than private, if that makes sense.
No, it
Whether
makes perfect sense.
public land down in the Wayne National Forest was 110,000 acres, whatever it is. Big open timber. It's beautiful, but there's giant bucks depending on where you're at. And same with Pennsylvania. There's a lot of good public land around that I enjoy hunting, and it's more relaxing. And I'm not saying I don't enjoy the private land. It's just it's a different kind of hunt.
Yeah, different style, different levels of risk that you're willing to take, and
Yeah,
different
levels
levels
I
of
like
goals.
that.
Yeah, different levels of goals too. So, yeah.
Certainly.
So I think that brings up another point though, in terms of it takes a while for your property to heal. So let's say someone has something between 40 and 120 acres as just a general rule of thumb. So not ginormous, but a good chunk. How how long does it typically take a property or an area to heal from whether you got a little too risky or the wind shifted and you didn't adjust? What can people expect?
You can say like in the non-rut time, it takes quite a while, because if there's a buck relating to your property, we're talking bucks because does and fawns can get pushed around quite a bit, and they'll be right back if you have decent food and decent cover. But a mature buck will leave. He doesn't like pressure. The older he gets, the more he gets locked into a small area. So let's say it's October 5th and you bugger your property up. Well, he might come back during the rut. And during the rut, you might even find that you have 2 or 3 other bucks cruising through. So that's different too. You make a mistake on November 4th, just because you might be another buck that's a mile away, might be coming through your land on the 5th. You might be okay with another buck, but with that buck in particular, you probably have a 2 to 3 week window of forgiveness. So I'm not saying it's not important during the rut, but you can always have another buck long range cruiser come through. But outside of the rut, it's real important because you could really bugger up your property for any bucks, because they're not going to move typically onto your land. Once you get into sometime in October, you've experienced fewer and fewer bucks that are from out of the area that might have summered somewhere else, for example. But during the rut, you can always have another one come around. So it's a little bit different during the rut, but you still have to hunt smart during the rut too.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's something I just struggle with so much because you don't want to goof it up, but you want to go in and kill the darn thing. So it's
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
how do you balance that in terms of just qualifying a hunt? And that might be a weird way to say it, but that's the best way I can come up with right now.
There's a few things. Every stand has its perfect wind, and even a second or third place wind, that you can still maybe get away with. And so that's really important. I only hunt a stand if it's good for the wind. I never just say, oh, I'm just going to go wing it. Every stand has a morning or evening. And so I'll stick to that really strictly. Usually if it's an afternoon stand, that means we're going in or not going by a bedding area. So we're not going to spook anything out to go sit. Where if we're going in the morning, we're not going through food, because we're going to bugger out those deer that are in a food source, and it's going to mess that stand up. What's current sign in an area, and so we'll skip around with our stands quite a bit. We applied pressure over here, and something a lot of people don't think about is your ability to get in and spook deer or not. And so some stands are a little bit more invasive, could take a chance on October 5th, but we know we're not going to hunt it again until the rut, because it is invasive to get in there. And depending on what we see or spook, one of the things that you should kind of focus on after you get done with a sit is, it's cool to talk about how many deer you saw, but how many deer did you spook? So I'd rather go back to a stand that I didn't see anything on, but I think has good hope, good potential. When I didn't spook anything the time before that I went in there, I didn't think I spooked anything. Whereas if I went into a great stand, spooked some deer, I might not touch that stand for 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah, I think that's really important. With how your farm's set up, how often are you scaring deer when you're walking in or walking out?
Not very often. And that goes for where we hunt in Wisconsin. There, it's a little bit different. We have about 30 acres of cover, fields with food plots and some switchgrass. You know, we might spook a deer. And let's look at it this way too. We're really, really being careful. It doesn't matter where I'm at to not spook deer off the food source. And so out here in Minnesota, that means layer of switchgrass, and that could be 50 feet wide. It could be 10 feet wide. And then we have corn, and then we have green. Some areas we don't have big enough plots where we can have corn. So then it's switchgrass hidden by green and maybe the lay of the land too. But you just can't spook the deer off your food source. I look at, like, if I go into a buck's bedding area in the morning and I spook a deer back there, maybe even spook him. If he likes that afternoon food source, you always have the chance that he might slide over and just come in from a different direction because you haven't spooked out the food source. But if you spook out the food source, why is he going to be bedding anywhere close to that? You know, they relate to that afternoon food source or favorite afternoon food source. So if you bugger out the food source, they're not going to be in those bedding areas. So at least if you keep your food sources intact. And so everything on our axis is, how can we get around food going in and out, whether it's after dark, after a sit, or in the morning going in. And then middle of the day, depending on the location, we walk right through a food source because it's surrounded in switchgrass, surrounded in cover. Lay of the land allows us to do that. But we know the bucks or deer in general aren't returning for a while. So it's all about, and so we don't spook deer very often. And if they do, I feel it's more random. And like I said, if we go back into a bedding area and we spook something, then, you know, a lot of times that buck will just relocate over to this side or that side if he still wants to keep hitting that food source every day. That, to me, the food source is almost more of a sanctuary than the
Actual bedding. That is different than probably what most people think naturally, because when the word sanctuary itself, I mean, you can look up the definition of what that is, but it sounds like people should really be focused on keeping their food unpressured. And
yeah,
keeping that
very
movement.
much so. Because if he's not in that food source that you've identified, it doesn't matter if it's a greenbrier patch on top of a hill on public land down in southeast Ohio, an oak flat. Sometimes they hit beech nut flats up in the hills in Pennsylvania where I'm at. Just an ag field that all of a sudden they pick all the crops, food plots you exploit or push or overpressure. But if they're not hitting that food source, they're not going to be in those bedding areas. They're going to, and especially a mature buck. Does and fawns can get pushed around a little bit, but that mature buck wants to find the best food source that he can lock into, low stress, and not experience any hunting pressure with. So those are two requirements. He'll favor a lower quality food source if there's no pressure compared to a high quality food source with pressure.
So the magic formula is to have a high quality food source with little pressure, no pressure. I mean,
yeah.
I hope you guys enjoyed this. My name is Jake Hofer, and I'm a real estate agent out of the state of Illinois. And it's my goal to help 100 people buy their first farm. Been doing that with the Land Podcast and clips like this every single Thursday and Saturday that are released here on the channel. And to be one of those 100 people, all you have to do is, if you're in the state of Illinois and I can help you, I'd be happy to do so. Number two, if you want to get connected with someone that can help you, reach out and I'll be happy to get you in contact with an agent that I would personally do business with. And the last one is, if you just simply learn something from the content we're putting out or you get inspired to take action, I want to know, get you out of that spreadsheet. I'm on a mission to help 100 people. Until next time, see ya.